do Frampton Comes Alive, fellas. So I think it's going to be Matt who starts us off on this. But first, run the numbers because this is kind of a unique one.
So this ranks on Best Ever Albums number 321 in the 1970s, the highest ranked album on Best Ever Albums that we are covering today. It's number 27 in 1976, 1,563 of all time, and it is not on Rolling Stone's Top 500 list. We are covering this because it's on the albums that you need to hear before you die list.
Top 1,000 albums before you die. Yep.
Right.
So
right. It's Frampton's highest rated album on Best Ever Albums as well, and he also has another album called "I'm in You," which I think the picture that Josh has behind him on his Zoom screen is actually the cover of that album. And
what do you think that's about, guys?
Well, the picture confirms it. If you had any doubts, because it looks like he's definitely got
that on the CTS Twitter.
That come hither look from Peter Frampton.
Yeah.
It's
coming all right.
Yeah. So. And I was texting with John earlier. So I'm like, well, I thought this was originally on Rolling Stone's list, and when I looked it up, I'm like, well, I don't see it on there. And I was texting with you, John, and trying to figure out, like, well, why are we doing this? And you're like, well, we can't cover the 70s without covering this album. And I think I pretty much, I hear from my uncles, everybody had this record, right? And despite that, I had never heard any of these songs. I mean, I've heard some of these songs before, but I didn't know any of these. I knew what did I know? I knew "Baby I Love Your Way." Is that his song originally? I don't know.
Yes,
who did
they're all
his
songs.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was his song. I just learned that now. Actually, that was in my notes. Was this his song originally? Actually, I knew "Show Me the Way." I did know that.
Oh, you don't say. You know that song, "Show Me the Way"?
Those are the two most popular.
So those are the two. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I didn't really know any. Oh, "Jumpin' Jack Flash" is a cover. That's not his song. That's it. Yeah. But anyway, my overall take on this album is this is. All right, it's mixed. It's arena rock for sure. I mean, this album is the most arena rock album that we've heard so far. The fact that it's live actually, exemplifies that even more. The crowd noise, it actually seems like a really well-produced crowd noise, as opposed to something like going all the way back when we did Live at the Apollo with James Brown, how the crowd noise was kind of getting in the way. At least I felt that way and kind of annoying. This sounds like, this is almost like the tablet for what live albums would sound like, coming down the line, because somehow, however they're producing the crowd noise seems very much more modern, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah, it's almost like they're like singing along at times, and they're just really into it too.
Well, and the way that they're produced, the way that their sound is produced, and how they come in between the songs, and they're not overbearing during the songs. So I thought that the thing that stood out to me the most, that I liked the most on this, was the guitar tone. I really liked Peter Frampton's guitar tone. This and that again sounded more modern. That sounded like a different sound. I don't know if we've heard that. I think the closest that I came to a couple of songs where I was like, okay, that sounds a little familiar. There's some of the slower songs on here reminded me like a little bit of a Grateful Dead slow jam. I was picking up on some Grateful Dead stuff. Doobie Wah was a song that kind of came that way. It sounds like a cross between a Doobie Brothers song and a Grateful Dead song with the jam at the end. So
I thought it was like a tribute to the Doobie
Brothers.
Yes,
it almost sounds like it has to be, because the opening guitar riff, it's like, well, that's the Doobie Brothers,
Right.
So I'd be interested to hear, the stats on that if anybody knew what the deal with that song was. But so I liked that. I liked the jamming parts. I thought that was kind of where I liked this album the most, is when they would kind of delve a little bit into a jam. I thought that was really good. I could totally see that's kind of up my alley. I could see myself getting down to that. And again, it's more of a modern sound. Having said all that, there was a lot of the actual songs and the singing and stuff behind that was kind of generic to me. Generic 70s rock kind. Not as bad as that Eagles album. I thought that was much more so. But it's fine. It's decent. There's some good guitar riffs in here, but there's also it's 70s rock and roll, and so because of that, it didn't really do a ton for me, except for some moments here or there. It's a long album. It's almost an hour and 20 minutes, I think. So it's a bit long, but I was still into it enough to be okay listening to the whole thing. But it's a little bit thumbs in the middle for me. I think the story behind this would be kind of good to know about, because, like I said, I do remember my uncle saying everybody had. This is like a tapestry type album where you walk into somebody's house and like in the 70s and they got a copy of this, everybody was listening to it. So glad I listened to it. Don't know if I would go back to it a ton, but there were definitely some good things that I took that I enjoyed. And I think I'll leave it there for now.
Well, Matt, you know why everybody owned this album in the 70s? Because it's fucking awesome. That's why everybody owned this album
really?
in 1970s.
Wow, okay.
Yes! Frampton Comes Alive, for God's sake. First of all, I can't stress enough how much, like, this album and, like, the joke I always make about Rumors is, like, you were born, and then you were between the ages of 0 and 18 in the 70s, and then you were issued certain albums. Like, Rumors was one, and, like, this is another one, Frampton Comes Alive. This is, like, in many ways, the ultimate 70s album. It's, like, got the guitar jams of the early 70s mixed with, like, what was coming with the arena rock. It's got the blues rock, it's got the jam, it's got that guitar box sound that, like, you immediately know it's Peter Frampton.
That's,
because,
like, unique to him, it seems like.
It's his thing, that guitar butts. He can play the hell out of his guitar. These songs are drawn out, but they have awesome choruses, just like Humble Pie does, which I'd like to put a pitch in for how awesome Humble Pie is too. But I mean, people of a certain age, it's unfathomable to me, Matt, that you didn't hear some of these, because people of a certain age, like, like basically, like, including me, I guess. So I guess I'm an old soul, but like, you hear that, wah, 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 I wonder how it feels. It's like you immediately sing that. Like, it's impossible for me to not sing the first verse of Show Me the Way all the way through the chorus, or Baby I Love Your Way. Like, how can you not? And I mean, and that's just, Doobie Wah was another song that was big. Do You Feel Like We Do is another huge single off of this. It feels like this album has always been around in my life. It existed in the top of the pile. My dad had many albums, but this was the first one I was interested in seeing, because I'm like, who is this charismatic looking guy? And I listened to him, like, oh, this is good. Everybody who I feel like who listens to rock music, male or female, who has any interest in rock at all, own this album and or can sing the major hits from this album. It's definitely the type of album where Peter Frampton's cool enough that dudes who were smoking cigarettes and going to like edgier shows, would listen to this, and their like younger sisters would listen to it, and everybody would like it. It's just, it's like a perfect mid-70s album. It's just, I can't stress. I mean, I can see how you might think it's a little bit too long and, dial it down to 50. Okay. But like, dude, you don't get and it's the first mid-70s album we've done, by the way. It's 76 and it sounds like it's 3 years removed from the stuff that we've done, which is also a nice little change of pace. But like, I can't, like, I'm not going to say I disagree with Matt more, but I can't stress enough how much I feel like you can't tell the story of the 70s without this album. It's like, in many ways, not the ultimate 70s album, but in the top 10 in terms of like albums you have to listen to like understand the 70s, because it encompasses so much, and it's sold like, oh God, 20 million plus copies, I think, too. And the story of Peter Frampton is he was a teen idol. And he hated being a teen idol because he felt like he could play. And Humble Pie was started by him and one of the guys from the Small Faces, and they bonded over not wanting to be teen idols. And then the irony is this album comes out and it was not designed to make him a teen idol. And think about it, like, when have you ever heard this level of accomplished musicianship of a teen idol before? And it ends up making him the teen idol that he's been trying to run away from, all the way down to that uber charismatic cover of him on the front that is iconic. So big thumbs up for me. Is it the best album we've done in the 70s? No. Is it one of my favorite albums of the 70s? Absolutely.
Wow. I knew those two songs, but I didn't have the same impact from Peter Frampton. In fact, I didn't even know he was British until I looked it up. It seems like he's one of those artists that was so, I mean, he's a 4-quadrant musician, right? He hits all those demographics, and that's why he sold millions and millions of albums. When we've talked before about how the like most popular artists ever that have sold the most albums, when we're talking about like Led Zeppelin 4 and all those other ones up top, Shania Twain and Thriller and the Eagles album, and it's that he is like that at this point in time, it seems like he is that type of artist that just clicked for everyone across all age groups and types of music that you listen to. But then beyond that, I don't feel like he has retained that cultural footprint that a lot of the other artists have. I don't know, I think more people would know Elton John than Peter Frampton, and I don't know why that is, because he clearly played music beyond this album, and he sold incredibly well. I just don't. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? It doesn't seem like he has either maintained his popularity in the same way, or just maybe music could move beyond him in some way. I don't know what it is. That was more food.
I don't know why either, but it's because he hasn't. He just. Yeah. You're right, and that's one of the reasons. Like despite the fact that everybody had this, I don't remember my parents ever listening to him. I can't throw my dad. My dad didn't listen to anything, but my mom never listened to him. It was never something. And it's something that I came across. Like, I had a friend whose last name was Frampton in high school, and that's when I first heard it. People called him, his name wasn't Peter, but people were kind of like, who's Peter Frampton? Like, what is this? I'm like, oh, he's got this album. Okay, whatever. And it wasn't until years later that I found out how big this album was. So it's not something that ever crossed my path. But he also didn't. Elton John also did stuff with The Lion King, and that he was also coming back with other things, and even actually it looks like Peter Frampton has an album that came out this year, so he's clearly still around, but I don't know why, but you're right, Josh, that it didn't have that sustainability, at least the way that Elton John did.
Yeah, I mean, I liked this album. I didn't love it. I think for some reason I couldn't get past the fact that it just sounded like all of that AOR rock that comes out during this time. It reminded me of the Eagles and Foreigner and Boston and all of those huge sounds, and maybe it was the live album aspect of it too, but it just seemed to kind of be all fluff music, but not substance in a way, very much like cotton candy type of music that is enjoyable on the surface, but that you forget about as soon as you stop listening to the album. That's kind of how it felt to me. He's clear. I liked his guitar playing. That's clear. I liked Jumping Jack Flash was a very bluesy cover of that, and he played the hell out of the guitar on that, and I liked I'll Give You Money as well. I thought that song really worked well for me, but I don't know. I don't think I would listen to this album again. I would need to see maybe some other album of his is more up my alley, but
I don't know what you're going to listen to that's more Peter Frampton than this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would probably say
maybe.
Yeah.
I would probably say I wish we would have covered this in a regular episode, because I would have liked to listen, because that's the thing. I this might be something that would grow on me. There was definitely elements in here that I liked. I'm not saying I disliked it. It was kind of a thumbs in the middle kind of a thing. And there were several moments throughout here where I kind of felt it was like a generic type of rock,
Right.
So, and I don't know if that would have changed over time. But it would be. This seems to me like an album that would have been more fun to cover, with the bio and all that other stuff, to have the more information, but and to listen to it multiple times. But it clearly struck a chord with people. Right? Yeah. People bought it, thought it, everybody knew the album. It just was one of those things that never came across for me. It's just, for right now, I'm giving it solid thumbs in the middle.
Well, and I don't even have this up, but I know a few things about. I said some stuff about Frampton before, just knowing from it. But I know that a big piece of what happened with Frampton was he was the lead of that movie they made about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, Matt. With the Bee Gees.
That wasn't a good movie,
and it was not. Yeah, it was not considered well, and people hated it, and that was kind of his star faded a little bit of that. Okay. I know he was also Cameron Crowe. I think he wrote most of the songs for the band that was in Almost Famous.
I thought Nancy Wilson did that too.
He was in it.
He was in it. He was one of the guys in Humble Pie.
I'm pretty sure he wrote a good amount of the songs. What's the name of the band in that movie? I'm trying to remember.
Stillwater.
Stillwater. Yeah, I think he wrote most of them, and I'm pretty sure he taught. Was it Billy Crudup? To play the guitar. Yeah, in that album as well. and Humble Pie is featured quite a bit in that, 'cause I think Cameron Crowe is a big fan, if I remember correctly. So he's there. He's also in the Homer Palooza episode of The Simpsons, if you guys remember. Do you remember that? He plays Do You Feel Like We Do in that one, which I always remember along the way. I also know he's like one of, if not Oprah Winfrey's favorite artists. So, and that's all stuff. I'll be interested to see the Wikipedia stuff, because I know all of that from Over the Top. I also know like other musicians like really like him. Like, I know Pearl Jam really likes him. He was friendly with, like, Bowie and different people like that. So he had kind of... another thing I remember, Josh, is that he was on that celebrity duet show with Chris Jericho. They were the first pair voted out, largely because Jericho is freaking terrible. So, yeah. And I know he's also good friends with Ringo Starr. So I don't know if they did music together and stuff, but that was another one. So
he must be, like, one of those just congenial guys that people get along with, and that adds to his allure.
He had a drug problem for a while too, which I think you really can't come out of the 70s or 60s without it, right? So it would be an interesting bio, but I do want to pick a pitch for this. I respect what you guys are saying. I can see what you're saying too, because like you said, it didn't really carry beyond this, and it's definitely one of those albums that when you talk to people of a certain time, it's like, well, of course, it's Frampton Comes Alive, and then before or after it might be, it's just an album that happened, and, it's like Hootie and the Blowfish Cracked Rear View or something where it sold a bunch, and it's like, wait, what was this all about? So do I even need to know this? Yeah. But I will vouch that I think this is super, super good arena rock, about as good as you can get, and I love this album, so...
Yeah, maybe that's it. It's like, when you think of the best-selling albums, I probably know all of them except this one, and for whatever reason, it's not clicking that this is as popular it is, and I just don't get it.
It oddly gives me nostalgia for a time I didn't live through, is the best way I could describe this album. I don't know why, but that's what I would say this album is. Like, I can somehow put myself in the audience, because it is a live album, and I can imagine wanting to go to the show and enjoying it, and actually sitting and buying a ticket to go to that show. And there's very few times that I feel that way with live albums, even if I love the music that I'm hearing. Like, it's even like when I hear like the Rolling Stones, 71 live album, it's awesome. And there's part of me that says I'd love to go there, but I can't put myself in the audience. It's different. It's of another time, right? Yeah. Somehow I can put myself in this audience, and don't ask me why, but...
Actually, I'm looking at the best-selling album list now. Meatloaf, Bad Out of Hell. That's another album that...
Oh yeah, it's like the third highest-selling album of all time, right?
And yet it's an album that like totally... I probably know songs off of it, but I never listened to that album. I don't It's amazing that it has sold as many albums as it did. Because I mean, does Meatloaf have any sort of cultural footprint now?
And guess what also... Well, he also was able to freaking do a second one that sold a jillion albums.
Yeah, that's... I know that one better than the first one.
Well, and he's another one that wasn't on the Best Ever Albums chart or the Rolling Stone list. He's a cold list and hot take solely from the top 1,000. And once again, he's one that I put unilaterally on these lists because I'm like, you have to cover that. Because
that's fair. Yeah. And I'm glad we are. Like, it's good to know about it, because I don't know, like you said, Josh, I don't know that album either. And the same thing with these albums. Like, I never knew anybody that had it. Nobody ever came up to me and was like, you have to listen to this. Right. And this was also not something that kind of came across in, like, the magazines that I would read or, like, the documentaries. It was just out there. I knew of it, but I never really was like, I need to listen to this,
You need to talk to people in, like, their mid to late 50s and early 60s, because that's who all own this album.
Well, I did. I mean, like I said, my uncles, my people in my family are big into music, but I never remember them listen. I mean, they talked about it, but they never listened to it. So, I don't know. It might be something that I would like more. I listen to it, but it does that first listen. It just spoke to me as kind of like that 70s arena rock sound, which is what it is. But it didn't. Really land with me, I guess, on one listen.
What other arena rock do we cover? Queen, I guess, would be arena
We're going to cover Boston, which is huge arena rock. Queen, for sure, is arena rock. I think in the cold list and hot takes, we have some representations. Like, I think we have a Cheap Trick album and a Journey album. And, I mean, you can't get much more AOR than those.
We're going to listen to Foghat? Is
And I
that
get,
a-
yeah,
No
we'll
fun.
get Van
No
Halen
fun. Well, and then
next.
I was about to say Van Halen, which is not quite AOR.
Yeah.
It's a different type of thing, but certainly we're, AC/DC.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we get stuff that was playing arenas, but there's different types of it. And I don't think this is like AOR necessarily. This is more still blues rock, jam rock, whereas, Boston and Journey were much more synthetic, produced, and like AC/DC and Van Halen were much more of a metally, real hard rock sound, So there's different versions of it. So
Yeah.
but it's of the mid to late 70s, and we're not there yet in the normal stuff. So this was like the chaser to
Yeah.
get to it. Yeah.
Hey, John, I also like, speaking of Homer Palooza, I liked it when Homer met Billy Corgan. And Billy Corgan said, "Hey, Hey, Homer, Billy Corgan, Smashing Pumpkins. Hey, Homer Simpson, smiling politely."
That's a great clip. I do always remember
Is that the one
too.
where he gets the cannonballs shot into him?
Yeah, he goes
that
on
the same
tour because
storyline?
he's the freak show, right? With the music,
Yeah.
he gets the cannonball shot on his
Sonic
belly. And he
Youth's on
just
that
sit-
one too.
Yeah,
Sonic Youth on that one? Yep. So it's one of the better early Simpsons albums. There's a lot of good early Simpsons albums, but that's one I always remember. So I do always remember the Peter Frampton's on there. So yeah,
that's right.
All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up, guys?
I think Peter Frampton played the Stillwater songs. I think it looks like Nancy Wilson wrote the songs, though, John.
Okay.
So
Maybe
I think
I'm
he-
mixing
I
it
think
up.
he played-
I'm doing it. I'm doing it off the top of my head, so I could be
I
wrong.
think, I just looked at that, but it looks like I think he played on as a member of Stillwater, because I don't think Jason Lee and
Okay.
Billy Crudup are really, actually
They're not
the
as good a
bass
guitar players as Peter Frampton is.
The
You don't
bass
think so?
player is Mark Kozelick from Red House Painters and what you
Oh,
call.
okay.
So he is. He might actually be
I
playing
can't
on it.
remember if Jason Lee knew how to play a guitar or not. I think because he was in like the skateboard punk scene, so maybe he did. I don't know.
He was also the singer, though. I don't think he played
Oh,
any
yeah.
instrument.
Yeah.
He was the singer for the band. But
And
Eve a dog.
even dog scratching down my back.
And can I put a pitch in for if you've never heard Humble Pie before? They're
Yeah, I don't know.
not going to
them.
say they're
Yeah,
a great lost rock band, because I think they do have credibility, but they are an awesome guitar rock band, as I was reminded of when I was listening to this, and then I played a couple songs back from Humble Pie, and I was like, woof, man, guitar work here is
Really
prime and
I
ahead
don't-
of its time. Yeah, so
any
perhaps
of their-
we will revisit them at some point, guys.
Are there any other
So-
famous people in Humble Pie?
The guy from the Small Faces, whose name I'm totally forgetting, is
Not
the
Rod
other
Stewart.
guitarist. No, not Rod Stewart. The guy before. He's the vocalist and.
I'm looking
guitar
at it now. I
player
don't
as well.
recognize any of these people.
Yeah,
There's
so
been a
that-
lot of past members. Wow.
Mhm.
They're still around.
Yeah, they
Humble
still
Pie
are
is still
around.
an active band. Wow.
Wow.
There you go. So
Well, I appreciate your Frampton facts, Matt. John.
I did the best I could off the top of my head. So I
pretty
probably
good.
should have cheated and did like Wikipedia or something, but that was just what I could remember. So, all right.